Okay, so let's talk about the Turbo Boost event. So Turbo Boost is an event that came out this week, and basically what it is it allows you to get 6 more item levels. It allows crests to be uncapped. Valor Stones are available across your character. We have dinars that are available, aka these puzzle and cartel chips, which allows you to buy deterministic pieces of gear that you're not normally able to purchase. And initially, Growl and I kind of had this conversation on the bench last week where we were talking about it being more of like a pseudo season reset, and we were kind of interested in seeing how it was going to end up feeling for the season. There's a bunch of weird stuff that ends up happening where you have to recraft your gear with this optional reagent to be able to gain the additional item levels. There is some weird stuff happening with the Gilded of the Undermine crest discount. It doesn't give it to you like immediately once you hit your 675 average item level. Instead, you have to upgrade all of those pieces all the way up to 684 if you want the crest discount on alts potentially. So like for this purposes, like if I logged onto my shaman, I would only get the crest discount to 681 on the hand slot, but I would get it up to 684 on the belt slot because I haven't gotten up to 684 on the hand slot. Some people have been talking about how many crests they realistically have to grind, where some people are saying that they need to grind 300 and 400 crests, which equates to basically doing like 20 plus 12s, and talking about how big the grind is. There's also some stuff where basically the delves, especially delves that use a map on the plus 12 difficulty, grant you 20 gilded crests, and even just, and 300 Valor Stones. So there's even some stuff that we didn't necessarily know that was going to be happening. And some people have also been talking about how many Valor Stones you have and the fact that they don't have enough Valor Stones. But I wanted to take some time today to kind of talk about how I've been feeling about the Turbo Boost season so far. And, we are only a couple days into it, but I think that there's kind of a couple of interesting things that we can learn from this. So first and foremost, Growl and I, again, sat on the bench and kind of called this like a season reset type of situation. And what I'm going to say is I've actually been pretty pleasantly surprised. I feel like this hasn't been a season reset at all. If anything, more people are online and doing dungeons, trying to be able to continue to chase that gear because of the kind of injection that has happened in the middle of the season where, week 12 of the patch or week 10 of the patch in a normal season would kind of be like a slower time for characters. But with this current season, with that kind of pseudo reset in the middle of it, I think it's brought more people back and has created more interesting engagement for the systems just as a whole. In addition to that as well, I think that this has kind of been, I think it was described as silly but in a good way. Whenever you're talking about like how fast we're killing raid bosses. So our kill on some of these raid bosses, like if you look at our Galleyway kill from last weekend to this weekend, we went from 9:22 to 8 minutes and 18 seconds. The same thing happens if you start looking at Muggsy and some of these other bosses where, okay, well, Muggsy, maybe not that good of an example because you have to stop DPS on Muggsy. But if you look at like Sprocketmonger as well, we chopped a minute off of basically all of the raid bosses. And that in conjunction with Corruption that's coming next week and the belt that's coming in 1117 is going to make our farm kills like 3 and 4 minutes in some instances of these bosses. And I think it's created the situation that's actually been pretty silly in a fun way. Now, obviously, I'm not going to be able to have a fully fledged opinion until later on in the season, but there's been a couple of trends that I've actually been enjoying the season so far. First and foremost, again, kind of people jumping back into the season and continuing to have more of my friends online and playing together and trying to gear up together, in my opinion, has actually been a good thing. And it's something that Blizzard actually hit on pretty well, that I didn't necessarily know that they were going to be able to strike kind of lightning whenever they were looking at this. And another thing is just like how much more powerful you feel. And it's kind of creating this deep farm period for the raid that we haven't necessarily experienced in a while. Where, again, like I said earlier, people are actually able to chop a minute off of raid bosses. And it's creating a farm period that I haven't felt since basically like Antorus. So all the way back in Legion. All the way through BFA, except for the season that we had Corruption, all the way through Shadowlands, all the way through Dragonflight. You had very, very long kill times on bosses and not a lot of player power that came pretty later on. Where this season, we have the Renown that's going to be gained. We have the Mole People belt that's happening in 1117. We have Corruption that's happening next week. And then we have 6 item levels that's from the Turbo Boost gear and Dinar, so deterministic loot. And this kind of creates a situation, at least for raid, where your raid farm kills are going to be just absolutely crazy fast, where bosses are only going to live for 3 minutes. And frankly, I think this is how farm should feel. This feels absolutely fantastic whenever we're looking at farm periods for raid. Now, talking about Mythic Plus a little bit, I've seen a common sentiment of Mythic Plus where it's made your pushing prior to this point feel invalidated. And I'm going to be honest, I kind of tend to understand where these people are coming from. If you were pushing really hard for the first 10 weeks of the season, all of your pushing has basically been invalidated, and you're going to need to push 1 to 2 key levels higher to get effectively what you had prior to the patch. On top of that as well, you're going to have to basically repush after we get corruption and repush again after we end up getting the mole belt. Now, what I'm going to say is Mythic Plus is more about the process and about the replayability of the system and about the journey, and less about, for at least for a lot of people, about the tangible rewards. Now, some people only play to get 12s, or they only play to get 10s, and then they stop playing. And for them, honestly, the system's perfect for them, because it just made their journey to get all of their 12s for their 3KO achievement. It made their journey to get all of the 10s for portals, or potentially even farming 10s for just weekly gear. It made all of that a lot easier. And on top of that as well, it made the process of unlocking all 12s for you to be able to purchase some really cool items with dinars. It also made that a lot easier in the process, and I think in a good way. Now, for the people who are, the slightly more hardcore player, maybe people who watch my videos, for example, I do empathize with the situation of having to repush and feeling like your pushing has been invalidated. I do wish that they maybe could have made it feel like the pushing at the very beginning of the season was a little bit more rewarding, because that to me kind of feels a little bit weird, that pushing at the very beginning of the season for Mythic Plus hasn't necessarily been as rewarding as it should be. It kind of is one of those things that it gets invalidated rather quickly the longer the season goes on, just because you progressively get more gear. Where for Mythic Raid, it's kind of this weird situation where the optimal goal is to kill the end boss of the raid as fast as possible, and then you enter a farm period, where for Mythic Plus, it's like a season-long push thing. So any potential changes in the system end up changing the system. Now, even with those potential downsides, I just want to say I feel like this has actually been a smashing success. I think that the Turbo Boost system so far, even though we've only been playing it for a couple days, has been fantastic, and I've honestly had a ton of fun. Now, the Rank 1 Mythic Plus title, if you're pushing for that, first off, you're a really hardcore player. But secondly, the title is going to go up a ton just over the course of this entire season, to the point where players are going to have to basically play the entire season if you're going to want the Mythic Plus title. That's just going to be the reality situation. But that's the reality of the situation anyways. And that's how it was last season, and that's probably how it's been every single season. If you really want the Rank 1 title, you're going to have to play most, if not all, the season, unless you're somebody like Yoda, Ellesmere, D-Wilkes, Hopeful, and Capote, who are timing 20s already. But overall, I thought it was very interesting, because I was kind of skeptical coming into this entire thing. But I think that the Blizzard actually designed a really fun way of playing out the season. Will I have the same thoughts 3 months from now? I'm not actually sure. Is it one of those things that it's kind of like if you ever played a Call of Duty, like sometimes Call of Duty had double XP weekend for gun XP and for character XP, and whenever the double XP weekend ended, the game didn't feel the same? Is it going to feel the same with Turbo Boost, where once Turbo Boost ends next season, the game isn't going to feel the same? The answer is maybe. At the same point, is this going to feel super good 3 months from now, or are we going to kind of get accustomed to it as the new norm? Again, I don't know, maybe. Are we also going to kind of get accustomed to having these puzzle and cartel chips as well for being able to obtain deterministic loot? Is the uncapping of crests, especially this early into the season, something that Blizzard should kind of be cautious about whenever they're thinking about how to create gearing in the game? The answer is probably likely yes, right? The Blizzard's going to have to be very cautious about whenever you kind of take those things away, you worry about the players just kind of feeling really bad with the current system whenever you start to strip away some of the QOL stuff. Like whenever the Blizzard removed mass res from all players, whenever you start to remove QOL or like fun parts of the game from players, of course they're gonna be kind of mad. And it's like one of those things that once you become desensitized to the stuff that you have, whether it be deterministic loot or uncapped crests and being able to transfer your Valor Stones across your character, if you become desensitized to that, then that might be the expectations of players, and it would be very difficult for Blizzard to kind of walk that back. And that could potentially be problematic in the future, because it's kind of been proven time and time again that Blizzard has stated this multiple times, that a longer gearing system is better for player retention long term. In some aspects, it's kind of like a short-term cash-in on some really cool stuff, whether it be giving players immediately 3 puzzling cartel chips, whether it be completely erasing the crests, whether it being allowing you to transfer the Valor Stones. But at the same point, we were 10 weeks in the season, and honestly, if that kind of keeps players playing for 2 or 3 weeks longer on average, I actually think that that's a very good step in the right direction for Blizzard to kind of do at this point in the season. And I think it's created actually a pretty fun player experience for me as a player. in a way that I actually wasn't kind of expecting it to happen. And I just want to say that logging in on Tuesday and having my friends log in on Tuesday as well, and then we start spamming 12s for 20 gilded crests per run so that we could get some gear that was upgraded before raid, and then we were able to purchase our dinar items before raid as well. I feel like that was actually so sick. I actually had so much fun doing that, just like logging in and gaming with my friends and having most of the people that maybe would have been in more maintenance mode on the patch actually logging in and playing more frequently. And I felt like that was actually the biggest advantage of this Turbo Boost event so far. And I think it's actually kind of created this really cool gameplay experience. And I hope that Blizzard continues to kind of toy with stuff like this in the future, and they don't feel super pressured to kind of keep the status quo, because I think that the death of the game could only happen if you just end up keeping the status quo and you don't continue to create these like fun systems that players can continue to interact with. I think that Blizzard's actually been doing a really good job of continuing to push the envelope in terms of like gearing and other stuff over the past couple of weeks and patches and stuff like that, where, you know, we got the Cersei Circlet last patch, which is kind of, you know, it felt like a redux of the Onyx Amulet, which was like a little bit boring, but, you know, them just continuing to push the envelope with stuff like we're seeing in this Turbo Boost season, I think is super interesting for me. I'm also actually interested in hearing your thoughts down in the comment section below. Have you guys actually been having more fun with the Turbo Boost season? Are you guys kind of feeling very similar to me, where it's silly but in like a pretty positive way? Are you not super interested in playing the Turbo Boost season? Are you kind of mad that it feels like a season reset? How are you guys kind of feeling? Because ultimately, I don't think it just matters about my opinion, even though I'm super positive on the thing. I just wanted to kind of share my sentiments, but I also wanted to hear from you guys about how you've been feeling about the Turbo Boost season so far. And yeah, that's basically it. I just kind of wanted to take some time to talk about how I've been feeling about the Turbo Boost event. You know, a lot of times I'll talk about like, you know, things that are helpful or maybe things that I'm critical about in the game. But at the same point, I think it's important to kind of give Blizzard their flowers whenever they kind of hit home runs, at least in my opinion. And this has felt super fantastic. So those are my thoughts on it. I'm interested in hearing your thoughts down in the comment section, and I will see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.